right, welcome to the Pathforgers podcast. This is a podcast covering all the activities of Pathforgers Publishing across our fantasy, romance, and erotica titles.
We are hosted by Michelle Keith
and Joshua Keith.
We are a married couple from Newfoundland in Canada.
Yeah. Also known as Alexis Abbott.
Also known as Candy Quinn.
Yeah. And so we're kind of kicking off the inaugural podcast for this, although maybe you're one of the very lucky few who followed us before on the former version of this podcast.
And who knew us as the keepers of the library.
Yeah. And on that topic, we're going to kick off, talk a bit about how, our recent success, which has been tremendous, and how much we owe to libraries growing up, and how we wouldn't be the authors we are today without our local libraries.
Yep. And after that, we'll be talking about our last week, which was incredibly spicy since it was our 15-year anniversary.
Yeah.
So we spent that in the sexiest way possible.
Yeah. And
we'll also be talking about our new releases and all the amazing success we've had, as Joshua mentioned.
Oh, so successful.
Yeah.
Ours is the best. But yeah, actually, we did pretty great back in February. We hit...
And March.
Yeah. We hit as high as number 10 for all books in Canada.
Every book that was on sale on Amazon.ca at that time, we were number 10. There are millions of books, and we were number 10. I really have to stress that because I know that a lot of people don't really understand the Amazon bestseller list, but to put it into perspective, we got number 10 in Canada for all ebooks, and we got number 22.
Not just ebooks, it was books.
In all books. And number 22 in the U.S.
In the U.S., yeah.
So we got, the U.S. is a much bigger and more active store. There's a lot more competition.
Yeah.
However, that means that we got 4 different Amazon All-Star bonus, which is a monetary prize gifted to the top sellers and the top books of the month.
It's like the New York Times bestseller list, except with a cash prize.
Yeah. So we are absolutely thrilled. Our families were absolutely thrilled for us.
Yeah, unfortunately, one of the downsides they don't tell you about having a hit book is that then your family all wants to read your book.
And so, we write pretty dirty.
So our romance is pretty gritty stuff. So I get a call from my mother saying, "Oh, I'm halfway through your book. It's really well written." I'm like, "Oh, dear God, did not write that." If any of you have ever read that. But yeah, Sold to the Hitman was the big book that just exploded.
By Alexis Abbott. So Alexis Abbott is our contemporary romance pen name. We focus on romantic suspense and kind of bad boy characters paired with feisty and fun female characters who come from a variety of walks of life. Sold to the Hitman was actually about, as it states, she was a young, naive 18-year-old whose parents were absolutely terrible and decided to sell her on the flesh market. However, she had a hitman take sympathy on her, and he purchased her in order to save her from a far worse fate.
It's we've always tried to tap into that vein of romance. We try to tap into the main market of romance readers, but we try to twist things and we try to do it our own way and try to be a little progressive with it. And you be the judge of it if you've read it or are going to read it. We hope we did that, and So the book at the beginning, I think, sounds very typical, very over the top, very, but if you read it, I hope you enjoy it.
Yeah,
see what we were trying to do.
I mean, we like dark settings. We really enjoy kind of like the gritty underbelly of the world. Most of Alexis Abbott's books are in New York City and focusing on the mafia and kind of the underbelly. criminal network.
Yeah, but I think those books tend to reflect us in a way that, I guess, the lives we've had, where they're dark, gritty, where you face rough circumstances, but you
find light.
You triumph by working together with someone.
You find your light in somebody else, in the people that you surround yourself with. So we focus a lot on trying to make it so that even though the world is really dark, there is light and there is still hope. And that was actually a big theme in Sold to the Hitman, was his dark contrasting with her light. She was sweet and innocent, but he empowers her and tries to make her see how wonderful she is and give her the opportunities that her parents didn't. So I think it's very progressive in that it takes a very damsel in distress sold to like a killer, but it twists it and shows that people tend to be something more than just good and evil.
Yeah, and our latest novel that came after that,
Saved by the Outlaw.
Saved by the Outlaw. Maybe a bit of a misleading title, but it's a great one. We kind of kicked it up a notch there.
Yeah.
Took it to
for people unfamiliar with the romance slang, outlaw is basically the 1% biker clubs call themselves outlaws.
Yeah, criminal biker gangs, that sort of thing. But that one, that was kind of a bit of a passion project. It's about a former, dock worker union turned, busted, unjustly, and they have the turn to look out for them in their little community outside the law. And, the main heroine is a,
feisty journalist
who comes from that town, who comes back to investigate her father's death. And so, that one took it much further. That progressive angle, the more that very, like I said, passion project.
Yeah, so it's been a lot of fun. Both of the books did really well. Sold to the Hitman outpaced every expectation that we had. It was an incredibly intense couple of months, and we crashed pretty hard after them.
Yeah, we did. We not just writing that stuff. We run the publishing company, Pathforgers.
We help other authors. We offer promotional and marketing services. We run Facebook ads for not just us, but also other authors. We do everything that you should be doing and you could be doing as a publishing company.
So we've been working nonstop for ages, and then after that big success, we just kind of crashed and ran out of energy. But that, for local people, you might know, is when a big event happened here locally where we live. That
we
passed
had
a budget where they're getting rid of like almost 60% of the libraries here.
And not only that, but they're adding a tax to books.
Yeah, we didn't have a tax to books before.
So we will be the first province in Canada that has a provincial sales tax on books.
Yeah, but we're also of all the provinces in Canada, we have I think the biggest illiteracy issue.
Yeah.
So this is heinous.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up in libraries, and if you've ever seen the movie Matilda, you can picture my childhood. My childhood was Matilda.
You were uncannily Matilda.
Yeah.
You had a family who hated books, hated reading, hated everything about it, but you loved reading so much.
Yeah. And it was what got me through. I mean, it was what gave me not just knowledge and information and kind of a getaway from all the shit that I was dealing with, but it gave me hope. It gave me hope that there was something else out there. So I mean, I always kind of went towards the gothic style books, pretty dark stuff, whether it was true crime, horror novels I was really into ever since I was a kid. I used to read Bunnicula and then got into Christopher Pike, and I loved horror. Dean Koontz was my favorite for a while as I got older.
We were both horror nuts.
Yeah. But
we've only published the one horror novel, though it did surprisingly well.
Yeah, and it was a lot of fun to write.
It's one way of putting it.
Yeah. Her Descent, in case anyone's curious. Her Descent under J-E-N-N Keep.
But yeah. And for me, I mean, on the other side of my eye we grew up in different places, and I grew up in a poor family. We didn't have money, but I loved books. My earliest memory is of my mother teaching me how to read.
Yeah, he's told me, like, with such love and affection, like, how she helped him learn to read at a really young age, how he was always enraptured in all these, like, fiction and nonfiction.
Yeah. I was obsessed with reading everything. I read history, I read science books, I read fiction, and later fantasy. I loved it all, but, like I said, we grew up poor, and for, like, the longest time, the library, I love the library. I mean, I came from a very small community. I mean, most of my life as a child was spent in a tiny community, Catalina.
And their library is closing down.
Yeah, that's one of the libraries they're shutting down. I mean, it was, even as is, it was only open a few days a week. But those days every week, I was there. As soon as school was out, I went to go to the library. I was reading books. We were too poor to afford a computer. So I lined up to go online at the local library. I was there every day. And, like, without that, I could not possibly imagine that today I would be an author, let alone, like, the 10th best-selling author in the fucking country, excuse my language, or 22nd in the U.S. Like, I can't imagine that would have been possibly the case.
No, because, I didn't have, like, we came from, like, I came from a middle-class family. Like, we had, we lived fine. We were comfortable. But we didn't have enough for books or anything like that. Like, that was seen as a splurge item. So, I used to read the books we did have over and over and over again. Max Hines was like, I read everything by him like 20 times because it was some of the only books that we had. My grandfather used to read them. And like old hand-me-down books like V.C. Andrews and stuff like that I had. But everything else came from either my school library or my local library. And they say now, like, that libraries are not relevant anymore to the way that we've changed society, to how the internet has come up.
I call BS.
It's total BS.
Like, even as an adult, when I left as a kid, like, the days the library wasn't open, let me tell you, even as a nerdy young boy who loved books, who loved computers, who used to line up at the library to get on, like, to get access to that stuff. When the library wasn't open, I was around town causing mischief. I was doing bad stuff that I'm not even going to admit to on this podcast. But as an adult, like, when I got out of university, there were no jobs. When I was done with university, I had to look around what to do. I was freelancing. And you know what my office was? My office was the public library here in the city. That was where I went to work. I brought clients for tutoring. I went and did research for an investment company I worked for, and other clients, for genealogies, that sort of stuff. Genealogies, that was my office. Mm-hmm. And the people at the public library were amazing. That place was great, and it was always in use. There were always other people doing the same thing I was doing, or doing research. There were people there applying for jobs who couldn't afford a computer at home, who needed access to a printer, who,
it's not just books. It's not just books. It's not just reading. It's not just stuff that could be handled at home.
Yeah, it's like, if you think a library doesn't serve any purpose these days, I'm sorry, but you're in a pretty lucky position.
Yeah, because, and it's always been this case, like the middle class and upper middle class has never really needed to rely on libraries. They've always been able to afford the books that they wanted to buy. They've always been able to use the internet at home. They've always been able to print stuff at home. They've always been able to do all that. But especially in like small communities and stuff, it's more than just a library. It's a community meeting spot. It's a place to go to, be with other people like you. And I gotta tell you, like, being in a library and being around other people who loved books and were passionate about books, sometimes that was the only time that I didn't feel like a huge weirdo. Like, that was some of the only points in my life where I felt like maybe there is a place for me. Maybe I can belong somewhere. Maybe there are other people like me and I just don't know them yet. Like, I remember telling my parents, because I was always a really introverted, quiet child. I always liked quiet. I had three sisters and brothers. And, it was not quiet at my place very often. And I distinctly remember telling my parents that sometimes I felt like I would rather be in prison because then I would at least get a chance to read and be by myself. And that was always who I was. So I always felt like I was like 6 at the time, by the way. So, but like, that was the type of person that I was. That was the type of kid I was. So I used to love all the reading competitions in schools. I used to blow through books. Like, if there was a reading competition on, I was going for, like,
oh, yeah, you
the
and
win.
me both, honey.
Yeah. So, like, it expanded my view. I grew up in rural Ontario. There was nobody except white people everywhere I went. Reading is where I learned about diversity, about, problems in other parts of the world, people who weren't very good, who hated people just because of their skin color or their background. Reading is where I learned about prejudice, and, it gave me empathy. It made me not just an author, not just,
Right.
And, it didn't just give me my success, but it developed me as a person to make those books so accessible and to allow me to learn about things outside of my comfort zone, to become far more empathetic to people I hadn't even ever met. Like, it was a very long time before I'd met somebody who was of a different ethnicity to me, or a different gender identity or anything, but I'd always been very compassionate towards people who were not just like me because of books.
Yeah. I mean, in such a very real, solid way, like, books shaped our lives. Like, libraries shaped our lives. Those public libraries meant so much. The idea that they're going to shut down these lifelines, and
at the same time as making it more expensive to buy them. So, like, on a $10 book, that's going to be an extra, like, $1. So, I mean, that might not be a lot for some people, but for other people, that just makes it completely inaccessible.
Well, I mean, one thing you have to consider, I mean, when generally in the past, when, like, a government passed a tax, like a sales tax on things, like, say, tobacco, one of the things they always consider is that, well, when you do this, people are going to buy less. I mean, we run a business. We run our publishing company. The thing we always consider is the higher your price goes, well, the less you're going to sell as a volume. But, so the same thing goes with the sales tax. The higher the sales tax goes, the less people are going to buy things. When it's on the tobacco, that might be a good thing, right? Less people are going to be buying cigarettes. When you're raising out books, what you have to take into consideration is that less people are going to be buying those books.
Yeah. And, I mean, we're not even biased on this because our books aren't even available locally.
In the stores.
We were, the library here in St. John's reached out to us and asked us for a way to get our books in their libraries.
Before the budget came out.
Yeah, this was back
half of them.
In February. They told us that we were successful, we were local authors, they wanted to have our books in the library, they wanted to make sure that they had that.
Yeah, after we were on national news for how successful we were last year, so 400,000 copies of our books.
Yeah, so we told them we'd be overjoyed that we'd be able to get them our books for cost. It would just be shipping and the cost of printing. We were fine with that. We didn't want to make a profit or anything like that. But they told us that it was actually out of reach because they needed to wait for the next yearly budget to see that their budget was spent. They had spent all of their budget and they needed to wait until the next budget. So now the new budget's been passed down. And it's 60% of libraries are being closed. Like, there's no real conceivable way that I can think of that they'll be able to buy our books. And
if local authors, like local libraries, won't be able to afford to stock local authors, like successful local authors.
Yeah, and
I mean, dear Lord,
it's just really frustrating for me because even though it doesn't impact me, it impacts our culture. It impacts the people, the community around us. And I know myself and Josh how much libraries have developed us as people, and
they've made our career. They've made us who we are on a fundamental level beyond that.
And to just have that taken away, and it's all over the cost of less than $1 million.
Yeah, the province is saving less than $1 million by shutting down over half the libraries. I mean, for a province, I mean, as small as we are, $1 million?
Yeah, well,
I mean,
we had
another rounding error.
Yeah, we had like a CEO of one of our oil and gas companies step down. He quit, and he received a $1.4 million severance. And we can't afford $1 million for like over 50 libraries. Like, that seems like 50 libraries is helping to employ at least 50 people. 50 libraries is helping to serve thousands, if not dozens of tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people.
Yeah. So, like, this cut to the libraries, like, you know, it just, to me, it is such an assault on the most disadvantaged, the most needy. It's an assault on what should be. Like, health and education should be our two most primary concerns as a society, as a civilization.
Essentially, we're saying one person's severance is more important than tens of thousands people's education and livelihood and community. Like, you're just tearing all of that away, and you're saying that that's worth less than one person's severance.
Yeah, like, I'm so grateful for where we are today. Like, that big success we had, and like the previous year we did so well. And I try to count my stars, how lucky I am every day.
And I am always, like, waiting for the other boot to drop, by the way. Like, I am paranoid to the fact that I can't.
We're in a business that's a bit volatile.
Yeah.
But, like, you know, we've done so well. And I feel so grateful for that. But to think that, like, all those years of suffering where I came from a poor family, I was traumatized, I had so many issues, I struggled through life with it, you know, I went through university that did me no good, I came out struggling at freelance work, my local library was my office, it was everything to me, and it's just like, you know, somebody else now, like me, suffering those same things, and just all the inner turmoil and trying to get through life, just trying to make a living. And it's just like, but their library is not going to be there for them.
Yeah.
It's not going to be there to give them hope and inspiration. It's not going to be there to give them a place to work out of. It's not going to be there for them at all.
It's not going to help them grow into, like, full developed people with a wide range of understanding and acceptance for so many different topics. And
because why? Because a couple of rich people in a governmental office
who have never had to step in, like, into a library, who have never been into the libraries that they're cutting, who have never spoken to the people in the libraries using it.
Decided that it was worth it because, hell, it would save a tiny fraction of a percent on the budget.
Yeah.
I mean, it's enough to make me cry. Yeah. It's heartbreaking. So when we crashed after all of that hard work into hitting those top lists, you know, doing so well, we finally we shattered our dream. We shattered our dream.
Yeah, we did everything that we never even set out to do. Like,
and we were just we need a break, and then this came down. It's like we went out and joined the protesters against this budget. We went out and joined everyone because, like, it's too much. Like, just the thought of that like, how many other authors might, like us, that might have made it big, are going to be gone now. That will never happen for them. Yeah. Because of this.
Mm. Like, and I mean, again, like, Newfoundland is is similar to Ontario in that there's not a huge load of diversity in a lot of these small towns. Like, you know, this might be our only chance to kind of open their eyes to the world outside of their small communities and help them to become more complete individuals. And so, I mean, it's not even like an abstract, oh, they might not be authors one day, but they might not be decent human beings one day.
Yeah. But, and like, you know, it's great you cover that part of it, like that core humanity of it. But from a sheer business perspective,
it doesn't
like,
make sense.
The amount of money our publishing company will bring in this year in tax revenue for the local government. And, like, to save the money, like, you know, for those libraries, like, how pathetic that is. And compared to what could happen from the people they inspire to create art. Not just books, but other things. The library isn't just a place for books. Like I said, I used to go because we were too poor to afford a computer. How much more could have come from that? Like, you know, in the long run, the next generations. But no, we're going to cut that. It's so short-sighted. It is not economical. It is not, it's not about math. It's not about anything. It's disgusting. It's short-sighted. It's ideological. Yeah, it makes me sick.
It does. So we've been protesting that, which has made it so that our time off has not really been time off at all. We've been pretty worked up ever since the budget dropped, so we haven't actually enjoyed much time off.
I'm a very chill guy, and if you hear me here, it's this is me getting my most passionate while still maintaining some civility. So, so it's been. Yeah,
so we really wanted to talk about how libraries have impacted our lives, how they've shaped us.
It's been on our minds a lot.
Yeah, we just wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be who we are. We wouldn't be the people we've grown to be. And I'm pretty proud of the people that we are and all we've achieved.
I came from a small little Newfoundland community, no money, a broken home with a lot of violence, and where I am today, it's unbelievable. I would like to say I achieved my dreams, but I never in my life dreamt that I would ever become an author, let alone an author of this degree of success.
You never anticipated you'd have reviews and fans and readers.
I never would have anticipated that when I put out a new book, within hours of it going live, hundreds of people have not only already read it, but left reviews saying this is so amazing. Like, you know, like, it's crazy to me. My life is just like, I feel like I'm walking in a dream.
And like, I've been pretty open with this, but like, when I was 15, I made a suicide pact that if I got to 25 and life wasn't better, that I would just, you know, kill myself. And it was libraries, and it was books, and it was this escape, because, you know, I didn't have a great childhood growing up. You know, my father was alcoholic. They all denied that mental illness was a thing. I've suffered with depression since I was a child, and I was never treated. But just, you know, it's funny because one of the reasons that Josh even found me was we were on AOL Instant Messenger at the same time, and he happened to look up people who liked books.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, AOL Instant Messenger only had so many different, you know, choices that you could choose to have as an interest. And books was what he selected, and books was how he found me. So I wouldn't even have this relationship, this 15-year-long relationship with the person that I love. Yeah, the person that...
partner, best friend.
Everything we do together. Like, I wouldn't have that if not for my love and interest of books, and I wouldn't have my love and interest in books if I didn't have libraries. Like...
Yeah. We've went on about this topic a lot longer than I thought we would, just because it strikes the core of who we are.
I'm like nearly crying because, like, I mean, we've talked about it, just he and I, but it never really dawned on me just how important it was and how many parts of my life. It's touched, like...
Yeah.
It's everything.
Everything. It goes to the core of us as human beings. It goes to the raw, basic, material substance of life. Mm-hmm. How you earn a living, how you just go about everything. For us, it's everything.
Yeah.
It strikes such a chord for us that I can't put it to words.
No. So, since we can't find words for it and we are best-selling authors, I think we'll move on to our next topic, which is essentially how we finally did try to relax successfully.
Oh, did we?
A little bit. When we celebrated our 15-year anniversary.
Yeah, 15 years.
Yeah.
You and I.
And it was wonderful. We went to a hotel, or a little B&B.
A bed and breakfast.
Yeah.
A local bread and breakfast.
Leaside Manor. They had a double soaking tub. So we went there and we just zoned out in the tub, cuddling up and just enjoying life. Which was probably the most relaxed I've been in years.
In many years, since before we devoted ourselves fully to publishing, since before you got into oil and gas, before that, before you were in insurance, before that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
My wife and partner, is the hardest working person on the planet.
I do not really stop.
Yeah, and since most of our break was spent like protesting and writing articles and just being very worked up about what happened, that was probably the only 2 days that you stopped at all.
But it was wonderful.
It was great.
So we went out to a wonderful dinner, and then we went out to drinks, and then we went out to the strip club, my old stomping ground.
Yeah. You used to work at it.
Yeah, and we met very many wonderful women who were absolutely sweet and sexy, just the right combination.
And everybody remembered you.
Yeah, which was weird because, I kind of always felt like a little bit of an outcast because I was just there from time to time whenever I needed some extra money or if I wanted some exercise or just, because I enjoyed dancing.
Yeah. And if you don't know us and you're surprised by this, sex work is work, and by God, it, we're going to defend that.
We
to
live
the
the life.
End.
My husband supported me all while I was stripping, and never regretted it. I'm, the proverbial choice sex work person, so I. Don't like to speak too much about it because I had all the options in the world and I chose to dance. So, I made a lot of great friends and met a lot of wonderful people. And I enjoyed my time, so I liked going back for our anniversary and kind of revisiting that and getting some wonderful dances. Spending some of our wonderful success dollars on some very sexy ladies who worked very hard for their money.
It's totally all about you. I never even set foot in a strip club or any kind of...
Until I dragged them.
Anything, yeah. I am a complete nerd and shut-in and a prude, if I'm being completely honest.
Yep.
Completely honest. I mean, I'm staunchly, sex work is work. I believe in the rights of women and sex workers to do what they want or need to do to get by. But
you're not a very good customer just because he's not a customer.
Yeah, I don't. I'm way too shy and timid.
Yeah.
But you take me along.
Yeah. And we have fun.
Oh, yeah. What a blast.
And then after that, we, speaking of sex work as work, I volunteered with the local sex worker advocacy group, Safe Harbour Outreach Program shop. There was a love and sex show in town this past weekend, so I got to volunteer with them on Friday and try to fundraise with them and get some word out around town that there is a group. that is advocating on the behalf of sex workers.
Such a great group. I'm just one of those groups of people that just makes me so proud of the local scene.
Yeah, I was so excited to find out that there was a group dedicated to that, and that the St. John's Status of Women Council here locally is very supportive of sex workers and trans women and you know, gender fluid movement, everybody that is marginalized, which is absolutely wonderful. So I got to volunteer with them, and then on Saturday I got to come back as a customer for the Love and Sex show with one of our buddies, Juanita Critch.
Yeah,
who is another local romance author, and her husband.
Yeah. Who, she's hit it big too herself.
She's with Harlequin Blaze. She has her new book coming out on May 24th, In the Boss's Bed.
Oh, May 24th.
Yeah. So we're hoping to coerce her or beg her or plead with her into doing our podcast next time.
Yeah, join us for that. I mean, she's going on May 24. You know what you need to do now on May 24. And maybe we'll get her opinion on the library thing too. Maybe she's a big library thing.
Yeah.
You don't know. It's hard to mention she's from around the Bay too, just like me.
Yep.
Those little libraries around the Bay, man. Yep. That's I can't imagine how you don't love your local library if you're from around the Bay and you write books.
Exactly. So hopefully we'll be able to get her on the show next time. We went to the Love and Sex show, and somehow 7 hours went by without us really noticing, even though we'd only hung out with them like once as a couple before. Yeah. And it was for like a really short period of time. So we totally hit it off. They are just like us.
Yeah, and that was when we were celebrating being on the national news.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're good for celebratory stuff.
Oh, yeah. It's great stuff.
Yeah, so she gave me a copy of her book. I haven't had a chance to break the crease yet, but it's on my coffee table waiting to go. It was only
like 2 days ago, but...
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm excited. Let's hope she'll join us.
Yeah. The last time we had a guest on was in October of 2014, I think. So, and that was E.K. Savins.
Yeah,
talked with us about horror and romance and sex work, probably, and all that good stuff.
She was a great guest.
She was. Great person.
Yeah. I keep thinking about her, and I'm like, we should just try to arrange something with her again, because she was awesome. She bounced right off the list.
Oh, yeah. I think we're pretty easy to bounce off of, though.
Oh, yeah. We're just so easy. General, you know?
We're just very unpretentious. We're very chatty people.
Yeah, you. If you can't tell, we just love to talk.
Yeah, with people, at people, whatever.
Yeah, at people, especially. That's why we do the podcast.
Yeah.
Just take it.
So, I guess we could talk a little about our plans or hopes or dreams for in the future.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh.
So we have a couple of books that are in the works, more Hitman romance novels. We have 3 in various completion stages.
Yeah, we have like 2 that are written that are essentially just waiting to go through the publishing or the editing and publishing process.
Yeah. And then we have 1 that's like just over half done. So we just need to get off our butts and finish that.
Yeah.
Josh is shaking his head. I don't know what that's all about.
Yeah. Taking that month off, like we've been on like a breakneck pace.
Yeah.
The past like year or more.
And like it's really stressful. Like nobody really talks about it, but having a successful book is almost, I'm not going to say like as stressful because having financial backing is awesome, but it's almost as stressful as if your book doesn't do well, because it's like now all of our books are going to be compared against our hit book. So we're almost like filled with anxiety and tension and worry and fear. Like, oh my God, what if this book doesn't do as well as the last one? Like, what if it was just a fluke? What if it wasn't like us? What if it was something else out of our control? Like,
There's so many
it's
factors.
scary.
Yeah, not to diminish, because of course we've been poor. We lived in poverty for much of our 20s.
Yeah.
So our 20s at times were pretty horrible.
Yeah.
The only reason we got through them is because we did it together as a team. But, so we know how rough it can get, but still.
It's a lot of pressure, though.
That big hit and trying to follow it up now, oh my God. It's like that feeling, sometimes you feel like a fraud. It's like,
And like Saved by the Outlaw did really good, but because it didn't do as good as Sold to the Hitman, we're kind of like, oh my God, was it just a fluke? Is it us? Is it, did we go off track? And I mean, I know part of it was bikers instead of mafia hitman. It was based in a different city.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of things that I don't know. Like, was the cover not on point? Like,
you design our covers?
Yeah, I do all the covers. Was there something more I could have done?
Yeah.
In marketing it or in promotion or whatever. Like, you never know. You can't really A/B test releases to see which does better.
It's an endless struggle. I mean, I don't know, because we cooperate with a lot of other authors, a lot of other big successful authors who have even managed to hit it bigger than us.
And they all say the same thing. Like, I know somebody who hit number 10 on Amazon.com, and, their next book got to number 20 or something like that. And they're like, so was it a fluke? Like, because number 20 is still really good. Yeah. But you'd figure that your follow-up books would do better than your first book. Because
right, that's the hope.
Yeah. Like, you always kind of want to be doing better, not worse, even if you're still doing really well.
I think that's the big, whether the Western dream, the American dream, whatever, the Canadian dream, is that you're always going to be improving, right?
Yeah.
Like, your life is just going to be a continual progress up. Like, you just keep doing better and better. But in this business with writing, you never know where you're going to be.
And I read this blog post yesterday that was actually really timely for me. It was by an author that I really looked up to, continue to look up to, Pepper Winters. And she wrote Tears for Tess back in 2014, and it did really well. And bloggers were talking about it. Authors I know were talking about it. Like, everyone was talking about it. Readers were going crazy for it. It racked up so many amazing reviews. She did so well. She has a huge fan base now. She has a huge Facebook following. But she said, like, all of her other books were just not doing as well. And she kept stressing about it. She said she was having heart palpitations because she was just so stressed out.
I know that's something you suffer from at times.
And it's kind of humbling to know that somebody that I look up to suffers with the same things that I suffer with. Perfectionism, comparison and fear and anxiety and, just dreading, like waiting for the other boot to drop, like thinking everybody else is, like, it's impostor syndrome, right? It's waiting for everybody else to figure out that you actually suck and you're just tricking them. And you don't mean to be tricking them. They just are being tricked.
I'm way too humble of a person. I grew up dirt poor. I remember I had a big gaping hole in my ceiling. And when it would rain, the water would just pour through, not drip through, literally pour through, like you turn on a faucet. Like, I didn't have dreams of being an author, let alone a successful author. So it was just this constant feeling of, like, this success isn't going to last.
Yeah.
And, imposter syndrome. Like,
And I think most authors do suffer with that. Like, a lot of creative types have a lot of mental illnesses and imposter syndrome and these fears and worries. It is a very volatile
you would
path.
I think a much bigger ego than I have to not suffer from
that. Right? So, like,
I'm way too self-depreciating.
So to know that, that somebody I look up to that did so well, that has such a huge fan base, is struggling as well. I mean, my heart clearly goes out to her because I know how she feels. But at the same time, it's so reassuring to know that it's not just me. I'm not the only one out there with these fears and worries. Like, I was talking to a friend just before we started the podcast, and she said, like, she was planning on having a book done a week ago, but she hasn't been able to finish it because her last release did really well, and she's really anxious about finishing this new book, and she's questioning the choices she's making for the book. She's questioning the direction. She's questioning herself if she's going to be able to follow up that success. And Josh and I have struggled with that as well. Like,
yeah, we've been there. I mean, like, you wonder to yourself, was that success just a product of my natural process that's going to inevitably lead to another success? Or was it a fluke? Was it something I did particularly then that's special that I need to replicate now? Do I need to look back at that and try to make sure I do?
Especially since, and I'm being frank here, I didn't...
Hello, Frank.
I didn't feel like Sold to the Hitman had the best cover.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel that it had the best blurb. And I didn't feel like it was our best story. So...
Like, I felt it was all great.
It was good. It was solid.
Rank it with our other books, I would have thought, by far, it would not have been the book I would have thought would have been the biggest hit.
Yeah. And so to not even, like, see that, like, to be like, oh, well, okay, so why did it do so well? Like...
And it did so well...
Organically.
Organically. We're a publishing company. We spend money on advertising. That's just like...
But it just went up immediately. Like, we didn't do anything.
We didn't spend much money on advertising or anything.
No.
It took off before, like, we had decided to go cheapskate on this one, and then suddenly it took off, and like, well, okay, well, we'll see how it goes on its own. We never did spend much money on it.
No.
And so it just took off, and it's so well, and so it's... So much of life and so much of success is down to factors you can't even wrap your head around.
Because, I mean, like, we don't know if, like, it was just timing. Maybe there was just a bunch of readers who just really wanted that type of book that were all looking at the same point. Maybe it was just that time of day there wasn't a lot of books being published, so it got some natural momentum. Like, maybe a big-time blogger found out about it before it was even released, and they were excited about it and tweeted about it right away or whatever. I know that happened. And that was just fluke, right? That was nothing we controlled.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's scary to not know, like, to know that you don't have as much control as you want.
But that's life.
But
right?
that is
life. We like to think that everything is like, we talk about life as if you work hard and it pays off. And you know what? We work really hard.
And it doesn't always pay off.
But, overall, it has paid off.
Yeah.
It's like I like to talk to Michelle, like, we say, it's luck. There's a lot of luck involved in what we do. But the thing is like, every time you roll the dice, it's luck. But the more you roll the dice, the harder you work, the more times you roll those dice.
Yeah, what's the quote?
The more chances you get.
You miss 100% of the shots that you don't take.
Yeah. But, I consider us lucky just because we are able to keep rolling those dice. We keep going together. We have the energy, we have the enthusiasm, we have the support with each other to keep rolling those dice and keep trying.
Yeah.
And
I mean, as it is now, like, financially, we're good until at least the end of the year.
To put it mildly, yeah.
Yeah, so, like, we have a lot of books lined up. We're hoping to get out soon. We've been kind of putting it on a back burner, the J.E. and M. Keep and the Candy Quinn names. Not because we're not passionate about them, because we so are. Those are, like, two of our big passions.
Our erotica pen name and our fantasy pen name.
Yeah.
We love those.
It's just, right now, because there is such a demand for Alexis Abbott stories, and it is doing so financially well, we're trying to make sure that we focus on that, because this is our job and we have to take into account the finances more than our own personal desires of what we want to write.
And
but
we have employees who work for us. So
so we gotta pay.
We're
a
responsible
lot of money.
for the future of other people. So it's like, you have to do the thing that earns us all a paycheck.
Yeah. So, but I've talked Josh into at some point this summer doing a total passion project.
Yeah.
Right now, we're thinking potentially the follow up to Her Descent. We've started it.
Our horror novel.
Yeah, we've started it. It's going to be set in New England, and it's going to be creepy and scary and
set in
fun.
New England, but ends up right here on our doorstep in Newfoundland.
Yeah, and eventually we have hopes of doing a third one that takes place in Newfoundland, in like close to present day.
Yeah. I think we had already kind of outlined that.
Yeah.
We have the way we work as authors. We write down ideas, and sometimes we do a whole story outlines. We have, I guess, at this point, must be literally hundreds of story ideas written down and outlined.
Our imaginations are pretty active, so ideas
are never in shortage.
Yeah, even though like we're taking a break, like we're stepping back from it for now, we have so much still that we want to write.
Yeah.
I mean, we're still young. We're only 31 and 32. Like, I feel like we have to get everything done now, and that like, I'm failing if we don't get this all done like right now. But we're still so young. Like,
I know.
We could be writing for the next 30 years. It's probably not such a huge rush.
I hope we're writing for the next 30 years.
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
That would be amazing.
Especially if we were earning money on our writing for the next 30 years.
Well, yeah. The only way we're not writing for the next 30 years is if we die or something horrible happens. But because we wrote long before we even thought it would be a money earner, let alone a career. So, we're going to be writing. Even if this all went belly up and suddenly we couldn't sell our writing anymore, it would be a thing we'd do just for the sheer fun of it. But, if we could do this as a living for the next 30 years, my God, would I think we are the luckiest people on the planet.
So, I think we're going to wrap up for the evening. I just wanted to remind everybody that this past couple of months, we've updated the Darknest website. Darknest is our website dedicated to fantasy erotica, which we took over back in 2013.
13, yeah.
Yeah, so it's mostly dominated by video games and fantasy art and writings.
And going back to our roots, I mean, the reason we took it over is because that's where we kind of got our start publishing, in quotation marks, our writing. It was where we first started posting our stories we wrote just for fun on that website to reach readers. And so when the owners of the site were looking to get rid of it or shut it down, we said, we'll
this is, even though we don't make any money from Darknest, we don't have any advertising on Darknest,
all donations.
We don't make any money from it.
All donations from it go directly into the upkeep of the site. And trust me, us and the host, the guy who maintains it, overall, it's a net loss by far.
Oh, by far. We put like almost all of the money back into the forums, into the software and stuff. And for any fellow authors out there or readers who want to, give it a shot, there is a monthly writing competition in the Writer's Corner. And this month is Orgy. So if you're interested in writing about orgies, have at it.
Yeah. So, give that a go. We have, every month we have a writing contest there, just little, it's for erotica. So, if that's a little too tantalizing for you, I understand if you want to blah it out. But, give it a go. We have little writing prompts to give you an idea, it's a project. Because if you want to be a writer, the thing is, you need to learn to write. whether you feel like you're in the zone, whether you feel like your muse is talking to you, whether you feel like you have writer's block or not.
Whether you're familiar with the topic or not, because the old adage of write what you know would lead to some incredibly boring stories.
Yeah, if we only wrote what we know, we wouldn't have been the 10th best-selling author in Canada.
Yeah,
22nd in the US.
I know this might seem a little weird, but I actually don't know what it's like to be either a hitman or a poor 18-year-old Christian girl who is sold on the sex trade.
No,
so
you don't know that. Actually.
No.
And for the record and complete honesty, we don't even know what it's like to have been in New York because we haven't been there yet. We are thinking about a trip later this year.
Yeah, because I really want to go and check it all out and possibly get kidnapped by a Russian gang, go check out a Russian restaurant. You know, the normal things you do when you're in New York.
Yeah. We're thinking about that. But
it'd be a research trip.
Research trip, yeah.
One of our friends is getting married in Vegas in October, so we're thinking of having a stopover in New York on the way home.
It's going to be a big old expedition. Explore the U.S. We've never been to the U.S. Well, I've never been to the U.S.
I've been to Florida and West Virginia, and I've driven through like all of the eastern states to get there, but we avoided all the cities, and mostly I just saw a lot of Walmarts.
A lot of Walmarts.
And this was before Walmart was really a thing in Ontario, so it was kind of a...
Rural Ontario.
It was kind of a... We had Zellers.
Country girl, you are.
Zellers and
Zares.
I
need a bay boy.
So, thank you so much for joining us on our inaugural podcast of Pathforgers Podcast.
The Podforgers.
Podforgers.
And remember to support your local library. Damn it! They mean so much to me, to her, to all of the poor little kids out there.
Think of the little children. I don't say this very often, but won't somebody please think of the children?
Please do. Won't you?
Thank you so much for joining us. We love you.